if you get the drawing right, if you get the kind of placement, the relationships between things, it sort of calls your whole self. Like while I'm making it, I have to think with my whole body.
Hello, my name is Eline Perez and you're listening to Are You an Artist? Today's episode is with Charlotte Mann and it's about mural drawings, commissions, but also language and categories. We recorded this episode at Charlotte's flat, surrounded by sketches on the floor, shelves of art books, and her cat peacefully curled up in an armchair. Charlotte has a brilliant creative mind. She's always working on something new and inspiring. I really encourage you to explore her work, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Dear Charlotte, we met at the Royal Drawing School, and I was really struck by your approach to teaching, the way you encourage students to draw quickly without overthinking, but also how you pushed them to really see, to deconstruct how we perceive the world around us. That stayed with me. You're known for your one-to-one scale black and white line drawings, often site-specific. You've created work in such a wide range of space, from a classroom and the facade of a hospital to fashion week and even private homes. I was also surprised to find out you spent 6 years as a fashion designer and that your work was shown at places like the Met and the V&A. And on top of that, you've been teaching since 2001. Thank you so much for being here. To start us off, I want to ask you the podcast question, which is, Charlotte, are you an artist?
It's a good question because my instinct is to feel like the answer is yes, completely, obviously. But at the same time, I don't know why the question makes me squirm. Like there's something funny about the way we use the word artist. I went to hear John Waters doing a talk, and when people introduce themselves as artists, he said, I'll be the judge of that. We use the word artist as like just a compliment, don't we? We say, oh, he's an artist with the way he does the cooking. He's a whatever. So it's a really weird thing to call yourself an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's really straightforward to call yourself a painter or a sculptor or a filmmaker. But when you make work in such a way that the medium doesn't have an easy job title attached to it, you just have to call yourself an artist. But I'd kind of rather not. I don't know why. It's a bit boring being self-conscious, isn't it? Yeah.
Do you know how you would call yourself? Like, how do you present yourself?
Well, I don't really do much presenting myself. I'm very bad at that. So like maybe that's part of the problem. So like I've been a fashion designer and I've been a stylist and I've been an illustrator and I'm an artist, but the work I make that's drawing, but it also is really kind of painting, but it's also on an architectural scale, and it kind of feels like sculpture to me because the consideration of the flat spaces that the drawings wrap around are the exact surface and like the height that lines are at and kind of the angle you are to them. It's so physical. So I don't know, like the idea of I don't want to be thinking about what I am. I just want to do stuff so other people can wonder what I am. Yeah.
And what kind of child were you?
I was kind of the same as I am now. Like I was someone who wanted to do did lots of different things. When I was a child, actually, I spent loads of time putting on plays. I had some friends who lived across the road and another friend nearby who really wanted to be an actress. And we all just put on plays a lot. And I'd like write a sort of script.
Oh, wow.
And then make and build sets, really elaborate sets sometimes. Wow. And then I think the most elaborate one when I was 14, I converted my dad's studio into a theatre, and we lived at that time near the Richard Clay's, which is a print work where they print all Penguin's books. So it's like a massive factory, and they have big bins where they used to just allow the public to just rummage through, and you could get rolls of like hundreds of meters of paper for free. And we had all these backdrops that were like rolled up and that kind of unrolled down, like with a blind system. And like I just made this elaborate thing. And there were sort of 3 really good friends came over and we put on this crazy play. And I forced my sister and her friend to be in it. And I don't know. Yeah, I did lots of that sort of stuff.
And do you know what that's coming from? Like, would you go to the theatre to see plays?
I mean, basically, compared to people who go to the theatre a lot when they're little, like, not really. I don't know. I mean, both my parents are artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up around people who talked about books and plays and stuff and making things all the time. So it sort of felt as if anything you might want to do, you could do it.
Oh, wow.
And you just have a try at doing it. And so they were kind of rubbish, the plays I was put. Like, it was ambitious, but, you know, they were just silly and kind of...
Did you have like
Yeah.
a theme
That
that
one
would come back?
That one was called Death and Doctors, and it was a sort of it was about a spy kind of thing about someone discovering the doctor who was actually trying to kill his patients.
Ah.
And we'd written this story, and I just I mean, it was sort
Not
of,
a very nice vision of
Yeah.
NHS.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I did always want to be a fashion designer, because I loved making clothes. But I just like making all kinds of things. My aunt was a designer, and she's like a really old school kind of couturier dressmaker. And when I was about 11, she taught me proper pattern cutting, but with my dolls. So she taught me taking measurements from the dolls and translating them in a kind of mathematical way to make a block pattern. And then she taught me how to sort of manipulate that pattern and do proper pattern cutting. And I made like little patterns and made dolls' dresses like quite elaborately. And then when I was 17, because my uncle taught me to drive at the same time, I went and stayed with her in Bristol, and she taught me like really proper pattern cutting. And we did a sort of whole load of, you know, measuring and making a block pattern for me, and then just real sort of proper couture sort of sewing, made to measure stuff, like kind of tailoring. And so I learned that sort of stuff when I was quite young. So by the time I got to St. Martin's, I was already doing loads of making clothes. And I think it's the relationship between 2 and 3 dimensions that is the thing that excites me. And I think that's one of the things I find really exciting with drawing. I think there's something about looking at a flat piece of paper that you're trying to make marks on, either in relation to something you've imagined or in relation to something you're looking at, and to make those marks conjure sensations of space and spatial sensations which are like speak to your body, not just your brain. Not like you understand, oh, I know that's sort of meant to be behind that, or that's further away. But like, I like the idea of making drawings which just, where you feel your relationship to it in a sort of different part of yourself. It's not like you know and understand. It affects you in a sort of non-verbal way. I just find it really exciting, the relationship between even just time and space, and the fact that the two have absolutely tangled up relationship. And when you start making marks in relation to trying to understand something, it can make you think harder and more excitingly than would have happened if you weren't trying to draw.
Analyze and...
But it's not necessarily the case, because lots of drawings are not doing that. There, it's a different sort of thing. But like, if you start to try and draw a map of the world from memory, and then start to really think about what a map is, and then what a day is and what a year is, and how it's sort of obvious stuff, like sort of so basic, like we kind of know it, but going over the things that are simple and marveling at them again, I don't know.
Actually, your teaching reminded me a bit of Merleau-Ponty's philosophy of perceiving the world through the body.
Yeah, so I've read little tiny bits of Merleau-Ponty only recently, like just quotes, because my brother has been reading and saying, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. You'd
love
like it. And people I like him. So I think I'm going to have to read some.
Yeah, because especially Phenomenology of Perception is a book that I read after reading Jean-Paul Sartre. And it felt quite easy compared to Jean-Paul Sartre. It felt quite accessible, which I really liked as well. So
actually, when I was about sort of 17, 18, I loved Sartre, but I just read the like Age of Reason and the Reprieve and things that were kind of like novels.
I think his novels are very
Nausea,
good.
I loved. Yeah,
example of his philosophy. I think it's a maybe easier way to understand. Rather, I mean, I read his big book, but you know, it's like 700 pages of just. But the Nausea also, I really loved. That book.
It's funny that I haven't read anything like that since I was about 20, though. So it's a really long time ago. Wow, how long ago is that?
Do you feel like your work was quite different?
I don't know. In some ways, I feel like the things I do now are quite true to who I was when I was like 8 years old. Just at the moment, I've sort of started making work that's in a kind of fabric-y world that's a bit like the fashion stuff, because I've been making these life-size sculptures of people which are to be used as in place of mannequins in exhibitions. And I was working on a Lee Bowery exhibition, and because he can't get a mannequin that's the right shape.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, what is the right way of doing this? And I just said, let's just make something completely particular and make it based on his body and just build it by eye until it feels right. Then I did something else, which was for an exhibition about the history of nurses' uniforms. And I made a collection of people who were 8 different nurses. Each one was like a real person that I had references about. So some of the people, I knew who they were and I had information about them. And I had photos of them looking nervous. And so I could build something with a kind of body language of insecurity and hesitance. They felt really real, even though everyone was made out of hessian and the faces were drawn made out with black hat millinery pins. So it was very unlike a person, nearly every way. And yet they felt more
Real.
human than a kind of, high spec mannequin feels.
That's true that they feel so strange.
Yeah.
Even in shops when you want to buy a clothes and you see, I don't know, dress on, and you're just like, oh.
And I think it's the hardness. It's like, so for me, it's like they needed to feel warm in some way and gentle,
softer,
strong in a soft way. And it's a really natural relationship to the big drawings I do, where this idea of things being life size. Because if you make a life size drawing, that only has any meaning in relation to the subject that has some meaning for the other viewer as well as you. Because someone can only gauge something as life size or not if they're familiar with it. And then the way that people will encounter this stuff just makes you aware of your own body. Because if I draw something, I could draw a cup on a windowsill. And there's something about it, even though it's just a slightly sort of black marker pen drawing. There's nothing kind of trompe-l'oeil about it. But still, I've seen people like reach out as if to pick things up. Or if you're not concentrating, like it's so obviously a drawing, but there's something uncanny can happen if you get the drawing right, if you get the kind of placement, the relationships between things. It sort of calls your whole self. Like while I'm making it, I have to think with my whole body. And then I like the idea that while someone is in the space with the work, and I had an amazing letter from a woman who had serious brain injury, and she told me about how there's a large mural of mine in Liverpool that she just said she came and looked at it every day, and it helped her sort of train herself to learn how to see again, because she could see, like her eyes worked. But after the injury, she kind of didn't know how to attach meaning to things.
Yeah.
And it was really lovely to hear that she said it helped her recover.
And when you're commissioned for something like this, how does it work? Do you meet someone and discuss?
And it's totally different every time, because sometimes I think, oh, this is the way it is and it's lovely, and then the next job is completely different. Like the logistics of how things work, it seems that things are. So the one in Liverpool was weird because the company that were building the hospital went bust, and it was all kind of chaotic, and they went bankrupt in the middle of the project, and the hospital was paused for several years. But before that happened, the art consultancy team for the hospital, they were really lovely, and they had just a really good relationship with the hospital. There was a sort of body of people who got to make decisions, and there was some high up executive people and a representative patient. There was, I don't know, there was a sort of board of about 8 people who really talked to each other and really got on, and there was good communication. And he suggested me, and I did some research and came and presented my ideas, and then they said yes. And then, the money came in installments, and I just spent the next 2 years making a really massive drawing. So That was apart from teaching. I was working on that for 2 years, and that's a 10-meter long drawing. So
Wow.
that was really lovely. I went into lots of people's homes in Liverpool. That was the first stage. My suggestion was that I would make a little stall in the old hospital before they demolished it, and invite anyone who wanted to invite me into their home and to draw their homes. I want to depict domestic environments within the context of the hospital, and just think about the relationship between these two spaces, between a home and a hospital. I chose one of the homes and then made this big drawing, which is like a life-size drawing of like a kind of cross-section through their house from the front to the back. And that's now on the walkway in the middle of the hospital.
Wow.
It's annoyingly not where it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be on a wall where, in the end, they didn't build the wall that I was designed. So the canvas I did it on was the exact size of the wall. And the whole thing was designed to be the whole of one wall and the whole of another, the kind of two superimposed. And then in the end, they changed their mind after the hospital project kind of fell apart and the company disappeared. And they were like, oh, well, you can be in this much more high profile space. It's annoying because now my drawing doesn't look big anymore. It looks kind of small, even though it's 10 meters long, because it's in the middle of an even bigger wall, which is weird. And it annoys me because it's not what it was supposed to be, but it's okay. It's all right. Yeah.
I've also seen that you drew an edition of a journal and distributed it in...
Oh, yeah. 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 That was the newspaper that we got on the day that my daughter Zoe was born. I decided I wanted to do that. And then I bought a back issue. You can buy old newspaper issues. It's funny because I was in hospital for ages. Well, I came out and then had to go back in. And then I did a sort of slightly stupid thing when my daughter was born, because I thought my first daughter, I just thought I can just carry on and be me and do my thing. And I've got a baby as well. And so I just tried to be normal too quickly. And I was working on a job just sort of days after she was born and making, a bit like you've encountered me today, I was just had loads of bits of paper and drawing things and scanning things in and emailing things off to people, and she was in a basket next to me, and I just thought, oh, she's sort of fine and she doesn't crying very much at all. But it turned out that she really wasn't totally fine, and she wasn't crying because she had really low blood sugar.
Oh, wow.
She didn't really want to be fed. It was really weird. And then we had to go back into hospital, and I had to face up to the fact that I couldn't just carry on as normal.
Yeah.
And it was okay for everything to be a total revolution. And then we went back into hospital and came out again 2 weeks later. And then probably about a month or so after that, I started work on that big drawing. And I used to take her into the studio. So I didn't really stop, but it wasn't like work. It was just doing my own thing, which is sort of different.
How does it feel different when it's your own?
It's kind of peaceful when you're doing your own work, which means you can do harder, more interesting work because there's no one else with expectations of you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was doing this job while Zoe was wasting away without my realising, I was just, having to draw a pretty girl, and then there was someone in Hong Kong saying, make her thinner. And I'd be like, really? Make her thinner?
Wow.
Oh, okay. It's just a job. It's like using my I can draw skills. So then when I was making the drawing of the newspaper, I didn't know what it was. And then I kind of kept doing it and found out what it was. So it's just, I think that's the utter luxury, is doing things, having time somehow. And then anyone who's rich enough can just do that, I suppose. But then sometimes a little bit of pressure is useful too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's really precious when you can get yourself a bit of time.
Yeah.
And doing a thing where you don't even know if it's worth doing, and then you just do it anyway.
Yeah. And
then you just get really serious about it. And it helps you discover something that you didn't know you wanted to look for. And then sometimes, like now, only 15 years later, do I realise, oh, that's like a kind of really obvious me taking stock of, marking this moment when I became a mother, which is more of a different thing than I'd imagined. I thought I'd just be me and I'd have a baby. But the fact that I was not the same person, actually, and somehow spending quite a long time drawing every page of that newspaper from the day she was born was a bit like a way of acknowledging, oh God, this is massive. But I didn't think about that at all at the time. I'm only thinking that now.
So do you feel like sometimes you do things and it's only like 20 years later that you understand why?
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely. Like when my dad died, I was in the middle of a project. Part of the wall didn't have drawing on, and then I was like, actually, I think what will look really good is if I just colour all of that in black with a pen. And I think it did look good. It didn't even occur to me that it had anything to do with the fact that my dad had just died. And then I'd never done anything like that before, and I've never wanted to do anything like that since.
Do you feel like your work is perceived in different ways depending on where you've worked?
I don't know how my work is perceived, really,
Ah,
because I don't really,
it's so funny because I
apart
saw you
from
had
how
like
people individually tell me.
articles like written about your work in like German, Italian, French, in all these different magazines. So I was
Yeah.
really curious about how.
That's just because I did a job for the School of Life and they had an amazing PR team.
Mm,
And so there was a kind of aftermath of that because, you know, they just had this totally exceptional mission and like really well funded, and they were just going to get as much press as they possibly could. And because I was part of that project, they sent a load of attention my way. So
how did
I
that
don't
feel?
think I should really get the credit for that. I think the reason I got the press was because they paid really good PR to get loads of press.
Okay.
if I'm really honest, they're not the only articles written about me, but I think it's mostly to do with them, really. But I don't know what they say.
But I don't know, like the French one, but I think that's France. I think especially with female, like
Yeah.
whether they are artists or actresses or whatever, they just make them kind of look a bit sexy, you know, when someone is trendy and
Oh
there's this
yeah, I
kind
think
of.
because I was sort of young and just come out of working in fashion,
Yeah,
and
so
I think I definitely was in that box where it was like a kind of design, illustration, fashion. I don't know if you can. It's quite hard to escape the kind of category that you started off in or where you studied, because I'm sort of not, because I didn't do fine art.
yeah,
And like I think there is definitely a bit of a fine art serious and design is frivolous that exists in the world, even
yeah.
though lots of people be like, oh, no, we don't think that. But it's not straightforward.
And I know in France we really like to categorize things.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is here. I feel maybe a bit less, but
Yeah, it's annoying. I don't know about categories. They're so tricky. Yeah. I have problem with even just words. Like, I just think that it's really a shame when you have to, as soon as you think of a way of acknowledging the boundaries of something, you can think of an exception. And of course you have to do it to speak, and categories are useful. But they're only tools for understanding. They're not real.
yeah,
But it is useful.
yeah.
Like, even with all the, I don't know, whether people getting really upset about men and women and categories of gender, I feel like all of it, it's like, it's just words.
Yes.
And it's quite useful. It's like to have a shorthand. But it's like, I think it's the same with other things. Like hardly anything is actually true when you look up close.
So true.
Like really.
And I think we're also like as human beings, we're just kind of made to, I don't make stories about everything we consume. Like we are just absorb lots of informations and we try to make them work.
Yeah.
Somehow, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a way of making something work rather than like, I figured it out, this is the truth. It's like you try stuff out in order to do stuff.
Yeah.
And actually that's making me think, because I've been reading this book by the director Declan Donnellan from the Cheek by Jowl theatre group. And he talks about not true but useful is a phrase he uses. And it's really great. And it's interesting, been reading his book about it's called Actor in the Space. And it's so much of it is the sort of stuff I'm talk to my students about, or stuff I've been thinking about. And in his case, in relation to acting and creating a stage production of, the book's based in relation to Macbeth.
Wow.
It's so much of the concerns are so similar to the sort of things that I find myself thinking about.
How did your teaching evolve? Do you feel like now you teach in a very different way from when you started?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But it's sort of evolved gradually. And then I think probably the other thing is that it's been evolving for a really long time, because when I was a child, my sister is 5 years younger than me. I made a kind of pretend but quite real school that I think to begin with, she found it quite fun getting to play with her big sister, who was like, whatever, like I was 8, 9, 10, and she was like 3, 4, 5. And then after a while, she was like not so keen on like, let's play school, Susanna. She's like, oh God. But I really loved like making, it was just like actual school.
I did that to my brother as well.
It's so funny. How did he feel about it?
I was so strict also.
Yeah.
I think because I was so strict with myself. And then I was like, he's lazy.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible. So sorry.
I think it's funny because my memory of doing it is like, most of my memories are like this. They're like, I can remember where I was in relation to there was a sort of shelf kind of counter in the kitchen where I used to make the school. And I can feel like I'm by there, and I can feel the sensation of leaning against it and having these piles of paper. But I don't actually really remember much about
the content,
the exact content, or what Susanna was doing, or if she felt about it, which is quite bad. But like, I really remember the being there. So I was doing the kind of feeling of like enjoying the teaching, but then also both my parents are teachers, so they were teaching in art school. So I grew up around people teaching and talking about teaching. And it goes more generations back as well. On my mum's side, they're all teachers, lots of teachers. I was interested lately, I've been sort of researching, looking into the Irish hedge school system, which is a sort of fascinating thing. I've got a feeling, I'm not really sure for certain. I think probably my ancestors, they could have been hedge school teachers, but because it's like what happened in Ireland when it was illegal to educate your children, and people developed a kind of stealthy way of having an education system, and it was in many cases utterly brilliant, and the sort of very poor working class and agricultural labourers and peasants of sort of 17th, 18th century Ireland, there's incredible accounts of British people being like, what? I've met this like farm labourer in Kerry and he can speak perfect Latin. And then how come he knows all of this and that? You know, there's accounts from universities in Spain. So the English had forbidden any education to happen in the Irish Catholic unless they wanted to attend the kind of re-education schools and become Protestant. But if they could get to a Spanish university, then they could continue their education. And there was an amazing account of someone saying, the best students from the whole of Europe come from Ireland. What is it about Ireland? They're the most amazing students. And I think there's something about education when it comes from a background of like you would be risking prison, you'd be risking fines, you'd be risking serious consequences if you were caught teaching your children and if you were caught running a hedge school. So they had to sort of find ways of just pretending they were just working in the fields if someone came by. And I think that I've grown up with the kind of attitude to education that came from my mother's side of the family. They're kind of Irish, and the sort of Scottish side are actually Irish as well. But there's a sort of attitude to education which is against authority. It's not like you have to go to school because the government says so. It's like the government says you're not allowed to go to school, but we're going to make sure.
Yeah.
And so education is, you're risking serious things to get it. And it's because of absolute sort of love and a necessity to learn and to take, because you can't trust the powerful people and you can't take for granted that you will be brought up to know what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to know things that no one's telling you, so you have to kind of go and find out for yourself. And you can respect authority, but you don't trust it.
Yeah.
Like there's a spark in there which is different, and
the drive, I guess.
the drive behind it feels really exciting and really important. And like it's a matter of life or death in some sort of like, there's an echo of a memory of it being, it's not just like you've got to go to school and you've got to learn to read or write. It's like, wow, there's so many amazing things.
To finish with some random questions.
Yeah.
What makes you laugh?
I don't know, loads of things. My husband makes me laugh. His children make me laugh. I grew up with it. My dad was very funny. There was a lot of laughter.
Do you believe in talent?
Talent?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I do. But it's a funny thing. I've never thought of it as a kind of believe in it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've met people who thought, you are talented. That's the thing. Like sometimes people have a credible appetite for something. And I think it's to do with having the gift of an appetite for an engagement, and then you do whatever it takes. But definitely, we're not different to each other. We're not. I don't think you could say, oh, well, if I was to just practice the violin really loads, I would be. I don't have a good ear. Like, I'm not someone who. So I think that's like, I mean, I appreciate lovely music, but there's, yeah, I think talent's, maybe it's a word that's got used in a way that's, I don't know. All I can hear in my head while I'm saying this is the word talon. Like I'm thinking of birds' claws all the time. I'm talking about talent. So it's like my brain has slipped sideways. And that's why I'm going to garbling. I'm just thinking about talons, which doesn't really make much sense. Yeah. I don't know about talent. I think it is real. Yeah. Yeah.
If you could have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
I hate these questions because I'll be thinking about this probably now after you've gone, and I'll be like, oh no, that would have been a good answer. Whereas on the spot, it's really hard.
But it's kind of spontaneous.
Yeah, like what comes up.
And it doesn't have to be someone clever also. Like...
Yeah. My mind just goes completely blank because there's so many things. So something that's just popped into my head, and I don't know why, is I was thinking I'd like to have dinner with Walt Whitman. Actually, I think that would be really lovely. Yeah, I'd like to meet him. There's someone with a good appetite for life. Yeah. And
if you could live a parallel life,
yeah,
what would you do with that life?
I might do sort of more of the same that I'm already doing and just have more time for more of it. I don't know. A parallel life. It's funny because I was thinking about that just the other day. Like I had some plan. Now I can't think what it was. I think film stuff. So film, I think I would really love to work in, like, whether it be making films, being a director, like what, I don't exactly know, but it's the whole business of a film, like a cinematic, like a feature film as an artwork is something that's so exciting.
I think it'd be great as well.
And I don't think I think it's too late for me to do that because that's a whole massive, gigantic thing. But the whole way of there being a massive team and somehow you orchestrating that team to make something that feels whole and unfractured, and I love that. And then because I've done a fair bit of work kind of in the context of film production, just like, money earning things and like doing drawings for film sets. And I love the environment. And then when I teach, and I was curating the film program at the Royal Drawing, not the Royal, well, there was the Camberwell, the one I started, and then I do the drawing from film stuff at the drawing school. And I really, really love that. Yeah, I think I'd be a filmmaker, some sort of, I don't know.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlotte. It was great.